everyone. My name is Aiden Sharon, and I am the Director of End Plastic Initiatives at EarthDay.org. Today I'll be speaking about the tale of plastics, how plastic impacts our pets, with Dr. Cheryl. On top of caring for animals and writing for veterinary publications like Catster and Dogster, Dr. Cheryl owns a small cattle herd. When she's not busy with those things, she can be found somewhere enjoying the Idaho outdoors with her husband and 2 kids. Dr. Cheryl received her doctorate of veterinary medicine from Oregon State University in 2010, and Cheryl has practiced in a mixed animal clinic for over a decade now. She also writes for various veterinary websites and pet care magazines like PanoVet and Hepper. Today we're going to talk about plastic in pets. Plastic is derived from a cocktail of oil, the same kind that's used in our cars to fuel our vehicles, and additive chemicals like BPA, PVC, and phthalates. These can leach into our pets' gums, stomachs, and skins, and are associated with a whole host of health issues for our pets. So, Dr. Cheryl, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. It is super hot in DC, so I've on my third shirt that I've sweat through, but other than that, doing fine. But now you're quoted in our Pets versus Plastic report that we released on Monday, and you've read it. What, if anything, surprised you about it? And what do you think was the main takeaway for the 50% of the world that owns a pet or those thinking of getting one?
So not a lot surprised me other than how unaware people may be. I mean, we've had a pretty good idea for a while now that plastic isn't necessarily good in all the ways that it's used. But I don't know that we realize the full effect that it has, not just on us, but also on, our animals, our everyday lives, that kind of thing. So I think this report is really important just to get that information out to the general public, because like you said, over 50% of people own pets. And so it's important for them to know what plastic products, toys, bedding, food bowls, all of that how that can be impacting our animals' health and overall, well-being.
So, why do you think that so many people are unaware of these health effects? We've known about the human health effects for around 10 years now. More and more reports come out every day. Studies have been coming out around lab rats and fish especially, but why the lack of focus on our pets, specifically our dogs and cats? It's particularly interesting to me. I have 2 dogs of my own that I love like my own children, despite some of my family pushing back on that. But
I think part of it is people don't realize how similar animals are to humans. Of course, it's not 100%, but animals, they react to a lot of things the same way we do. Their body functions a lot the same way ours does. And I don't think people realize that. I mean, some people do treat them like humans, and that's great. But that's not to say that they don't realize how similar they actually are and how things really affect them. The other problem, I think, is that plastic is convenient. It's inexpensive. It comes in so many shapes and sizes and, options. It's just an easy product for pet owners to use. And so it's hard to kind of resist using it when it's so available, and so inexpensive.
So what are some of the risks to our dogs and cats that are eating plastic or ingesting these plastic related chemicals, either, through their toys or even through their food? What are some of those dangers, and how do you know those are actually dangerous for our pets?
Yeah. Well, so there's several issues here with plastic. The first one being, the actual object itself. A lot of chewers, especially, can get through a plastic toy pretty easily. And then you end up with a bunch of chunks that usually end up getting swallowed. And that's bad for a couple of reasons. First of all, it creates sharp edges, which can cut, the gums and the mouth and the throat, and even puncture, further on down the digestive system. It can also break teeth, because some plastic products are really hard, and dogs will go after them with, quite a bit of aggression and can break teeth. On top of that, if the chunk is big enough, it can actually get lodged in the throat and cause choke, or get lodged somewhere further down the digestive tract, which can be an emergency situation. The second problem with it is then the chemicals that we're talking about here. So like BPA and phthalates and even formaldehyde and all that kind of stuff that's used in plastic and the production of plastic comes out of those products. So a dog doesn't have to eat it necessarily to have a problem, because that stuff can actually be absorbed through the gums and the tongue, and the mouth is covered in mucous membranes, which are like open 4-lane highways for stuff to pass through, and so all those nasty chemicals can get leached from the plastic into an animal's body just by chewing on a product. They don't even have to eat it, but then of course if they eat it, that risk is even greater, because then it's sitting in the stomach or digestive tract for a longer time, allowing those chemicals to leach out. And what we do know about those chemicals from rat studies is that some of them are actually toxic, like full-on toxic to some organs of the body, and some of them mess with the body's endocrine system, which is like a messenger system of the body. So it can lead to all kinds of disruptions with metabolism, with brain organization, and even lead to some types of cancer potentially. And then a third thing that I have trouble with plastics is it's easily damaged. So you take a food bowl, a dog chews on the edge of it a little bit and creates a little like pocket or hole in that plastic that then you can't clean out because of it. And that just it makes a little home for bacteria to grow. And then what you have is a bowl that you can't thoroughly sterilize, potentially leading to infections, in dogs once they use it. So yeah, there's quite a few issues with plastic.
Yeah. And just a note for the audience, we do see your questions and we'll try to answer some of those towards the end of this webinar. But on top of the toys and the food and everything, we also come to realize that a lot of the bedding that we use for our pets tends to be made up of microplastics. What a lot of people don't realize is a lot of those poly fabrics or those fabric blends are actually plastic. They may feel soft, so you don't think about it, but due to their additive chemicals and the way that they kind of shed the same way that our pets shed, we are exposing them to those chemicals in that way as well. So when they're laying on their beds, they're also inhaling all of those same chemicals. But do you mind going in a little bit about their food? Like there can't possibly be plastic in their food. There can't be plastic in the food they use. Oh, I didn't like that look. Oh no. But can you talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, unfortunately, I don't want to burst anyone's bubble here. But yeah, our pet food isn't as safe as we hope, for a couple of reasons. I mean, we're all aware of the various product recalls. I mean, it seems like there's always some pet food that's being recalled for contamination or something. Sometimes even full-on plastic bits, but that's very obvious and beside the point. What the real problem is, that a lot of microplastics and those same chemicals can get into pet food, mainly from the packaging. You think about it, a lot of kibble these days are packaged in plastic bags, which is great because it's waterproof. They have a little zipper top, helps ensure freshness, but also the potential for those same chemicals to be leaching into the dog's food over time. Another big one is canned food. You think that would be safe, the metal can, but actually those metal cans are coated inside with a little layer of plastic from coming in contact with the metal can and having a reaction. Again, so that plastic can leach those same chemicals, especially when heated to high temperatures, which is exactly what happens when they process that food product and actually close the can. So there have been studies and findings of these chemicals straight in the dog food.
Yeah, one of those staggering things we found when doing research for this report was just the amount of plastic that also goes into pet food when there's making the pet food. So you have ear tags for certain cattle feed or certain feed that's going into this stock, and then that's just getting ground up directly into your pet's food, so they're consuming plastic that way, as well as in some countries they take old thrown out human food, kind of ground it down, mix it with other foods, and then sell it back out as pet food. And then I'm from North Carolina. I went to school in Wilmington, North Carolina, and we had a Hurricane Florence come through, wiped out a lot of the hog farms and the pig farms in that area. So we ended up with huge stockpile of dead pigs that were then ground up and then sold back to consumers as pet food. Can you
Right.
talk about why there is so little regulation and why there's so little, you know, awareness of what's going on when it comes to this industry? Like, we're so worried about our pets and we're so worried about our own health. Why is this such a common problem?
Again, I think it comes down to convenience,
Yeah.
and expense, because obviously it's cheaper to use those sources in food than it is to go out and get, human grade or that ingredients. Um, and possibly a little bit too that we're still under the impression that, dogs in the wild are scavengers. So they do hunt some, but they also eat, dead carcasses that they find and that kind of stuff. So, it must be fine to then grind those up and put them in feed. But I do think the main reason is the convenience and price, because there are pet food companies that do use like human grain products or source products where they aren't using the animal byproducts and that kind of stuff, but they have a pretty hefty price tag too that a lot of pet owners just can't afford. When you're looking at feeding a $90 bag of food over the lifetime of a pet, it really adds up, and some people simply can't do that.
So what are some tips you have for pet owners? Like, how can they move away from the amount of plastic they're using in their day-to-day lives for their pets? We've made some switches in my life, but I'd love to hear kind of what you do and what recommendations you have for pet owners.
Yeah, so if possible, go all natural. So for toys and whatnot, that could be like natural rubber or leather, or you could, or like hemp rope, that kind of stuff is really good as long as it hasn't been treated with something. Avoid the plastic toys for another reason, not just for the chemicals and whatnot, but the plastic is a really hard product to get the right texture and durability with. And so things like rubber and stuff are naturally durable and usually less likely to chunk off and cause problems like that. And then for food bowls and stuff, stainless steel or ceramic are really good. And bedding, if you can go again, natural. So cotton or like down even is a really good alternative. It's going to cost you more and might be harder to find, but again, realizing what it's doing for your pet's health should be worth it. So
now, do you have any dogs of your own, and do you tell us what they eat? My house, I've been trying to make the shift slowly to fresh meals for our dogs, such as chicken and steamed carrots. We were doing raw carrots for a while, but my dog Buzz refuses to eat them unless for whatever reason it's from my old college roommate. So we feed him a lot of carrots, chicken, blueberries as well. But for your own pets, do you kind of follow that same diet, or do you go for the more natural foods that you can buy directly from the store?
Yeah, so I have two dogs. They're both very active, so it takes kind of a special formula weight on them. I do really like the farmer's dog. They do the fresh subscription delivery, so it's like not only is it healthy and less processed, it also just arrives at your door. Like how easy, you don't have to go out and look for it. It is more expensive, of course, but I mean, you're investing in like the life of your pet, so if you can, it's definitely worth it. And they're also good too because they can kind of customize your diet. So if your dog has allergies, they can leave those ingredients out, or like for mine, they can give them a little, energy protein boost that they need in order to keep the weight on and stuff like that. So it is really nice.
Now, what about I personally don't own any cats. I do love cats, but for cat owners in particular, what food recommendations do you want to make for them? I feel like toys is kind of in a similar vein to dogs, but cats are a little bit different in terms of what they eat. I don't know if it's a more fish-based diet. I don't know if it's a more chicken-based diet.
Yeah, so cats need a lot of protein, so that's a hard one because protein from animal sources is preferred over protein from plant sources for cats. And so you run into, the issue with balancing that protein with a safe ingredient, plastic added kind of deal with cost, which can be difficult. There are a couple good products. So Instinct makes a good cat product. It's they have a freeze dried option, so it's as minimally processed as possible. They freeze dry it rather than cook it, so it's a little more natural. And Origin has another good one, kind of similar freeze dried deal.
Now, when it comes to food, and we'll just talk about food at first, but do you think there should be more honest labeling when it comes to food? And then how do you see that changing in the near future with the rise of pet ownership in the United States and around the world?
Yeah. So yeah, honest labeling would be a great first step. Simply because, they have to list the ingredients and they have to list like minimum or maximums of certain nutrients. What's difficult is a lot of pet owners maybe don't know what a byproduct is or a meal is. So that's something that would be nice if you were to list out what those actually were. Some pet owners would be a little more wary because
can you list out some of those byproducts?
Yeah, so byproducts would be sometimes organ meat or tissues like that, like skin. Usually they don't include like feet, like hooves or that kind of thing. But sometimes. So yeah, things like basically things that are left over that are still edible. So like hair is not edible, that kind of feathers are not edible, that kind of stuff. Some meals and byproducts can actually be pretty nutritious, but it all depends what they are and how they're processed. Again, since it's such a broad category, that's really hard to judge just from the label of byproduct, As far as like regulations changing, I don't see it happening very quickly. I feel like the more the public becomes aware of this and the more pushback the companies get from consumers, the more it will change. But I think it's going to be a very gradual, slow process just because you need to find a replacement option first that people that the company can use and that people are okay with. So
yeah, that's a similar issue with all plastic. Like I'm currently surrounded by plastic because I don't seem to have another alternative. Like I think my pen, my phone, my computer, it's all just, we don't have alternatives yet, but we're working on those. So in terms of toys though, do you think there will be a quicker shift in toys in the way that pet owners use different items? I use cotton t-shirts for my pets now, which turned out to be their favorite toy, which is slightly annoying to me because I've spent hundreds of dollars on other toys over the years, and they decided my ratty work shirt is the one they want to play with. But other than that, what recommendations do you have?
That's great. I mean, it's also reusing a product, so cotton is a good way to go, as long as it's big enough that they can't swallow it whole. So socks. Socks aren't a great idea for larger dogs. And as long as they aren't like the shredding type that can really turn a t-shirt into, 40 pieces quickly. So that's what you run up against is finding something they like and that they aren't going to immediately destroy. And so that's really a tough balance and is different, for every animal because they all have their preferences. But I think toys might make a shift faster. Because it's a huge industry, but it's not, I feel like there's not the investment that the food industry has, in the products they currently carry. It's a little easier for them to change up, what they're offering. And so hopefully, as more consumers become aware and ask for different products, I think pet toy companies can respond a little bit faster than pet food companies could.
This is kind of unrelated, but I've heard differing things about Rawhide toys. And just while I have you, I wanted to ask, are those safe for pets? Is it safe as long as you're monitoring? Are they truly digestible?
Yeah, so it really depends on how it's processed.
Okay.
So some rawhide, if it's still a little bit flexible, is a little better than the stuff that's like dried to a crisp, because
Gotcha.
that's very brittle and can break. But yet it should be used with supervision, just because there's always the chance that they could swallow it, and they can have sharp edges and whatnot. Whether it's digestible or not, it can still cause a problem. So, I mean, with most toys, you want to use supervision anyway, but rawhides especially, but choose a more flexible product, or a t-shirt works better.
Now, before we jump to questions, is there anything else you want to say or advise on? Anything you want to share about your experience with plastic and pets, or your experience with pets in general, about how beneficial they are in your life as well?
Yeah, I mean, of course they're beneficial. But I think what I want to share, I think most, is talk to your vet. I mean, they're gonna have firsthand stories too. I mean, we all have like the weird things that we found in dog stomach stories, you know, and a lot of that revolves around plastic. But talk to your vet, because I mean, especially they'll have knowledge of your location and area and be able to recommend, you know, products or food or whatever that you can easily get wherever you live. They're just a great source. And also, if they aren't already on it, talking to them will then hopefully spark them to continue this conversation with other pet owners, just to get the word out, you know, and make more people aware of the possible problems.
Yeah, I worked at a vet's office all through high school. I had the opportunity to work in my local vet, and she essentially had a bin of all the plastic toys she pulled out of pets, and would just show those to owners when they came in, and just talk about like, hey, like maybe with your giant dog, we shouldn't be consuming these tiny toys and things.
People love a good visual like that. So
yeah. But I would love to take some questions from the audience if we have some ready. So the first one is, do you think we can learn about plastic effects on human health through the plastic effects on our pets?
Absolutely. So pets make really good sentinels, we can call them, which are, it's basically something that you can observe the effects of something else on and then relate it back to you. So since pets are with us, they're in our homes, they're in our cars, they're in our yards, they're on the walks with us. They're exposed to virtually the exact same things that we are. And so if something's affecting them in that environment, it's more than likely also affecting us. And so I think finding out more and more about how plastics affect pets will help us then to correlate that to human health as well.
Yeah, and they also spend, a lot of pets tend to spend a lot of their time indoors. So they're more exposed to those indoor pollutants, similar to how babies are exposed to more of those indoor pollutants throughout their life cycle, at the beginning of their life cycle. So those are also a great gauge.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there any way to work around plastic in pet food? Thought it was safe until canned food was mentioned. And are there safer packaging alternatives besides, we mentioned going to the store and you can buy fresh human grade food, but that's not exactly accessible to everybody.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. And again, something that we all need to work on together. I wouldn't recommend necessarily home cooking for your pet unless you have a recipe that a vet or a nutritionist has worked out for you. But that is an option. Of course, you cut out the packaging completely that way, and you know exactly what's going in it. The other thing is, those minimally processed, more fresh diets might be the way to go. And the other thing is just watch, the recall. So everybody, the FDA is pretty on top of those recalls. And so watch for any recalls that involve plastic or harmful chemicals and stuff like that. And then avoid, those pet foods.
Awesome. Thank you. And then what non-plastic infused foods do you recommend for cats? We went over this a little bit, and I know it's difficult and I know it can be hard to find, but what do you typically recommend?
Non-plastic infused. Well, I would like it most are started that way, but again, I like Origin, I like Instinct, both. Again, the canned food, it's hard to get around that. I don't know. I haven't seen any studies on the pouches. They have those little I haven't seen any studies on that to know if those are better as far as the chemical exposure or not. But that might be another option, just a different type of packaging that hopefully is a little safer. Yeah, otherwise, it might help a little to store the food in like a stainless steel container or something like that too, to just decrease the amount of contact the food has with the packaging.
Yeah, another thing to note on the food aspect of things is plastics become so pervasive in our life, and it's in our oceans, so it's ending up in our, our fish feed, it's ending up in our air, which is then inhaled by all of our cattle and livestock. So completely avoiding plastic as of right now without proper regulations and proper top down from the source regulations is going to be extremely difficult to do. Same thing with, unfortunately, our foods. So we too are exposed to the same things. And like Dr. Cheryl said, they add the sentinels to us, but we also kind of add the sentinels to them.
Mm-hmm.
So as a puppy mom on a budget, the person asking the question, we switched to dry dog food. What are the best recommendations?
On a budget. Let's see. Again, it's going to be hard just from the packaging standpoint. Like all the packaging is fairly similar across the board. Right. But some good foods on a budget would be like a Purina Pro Plan or Purina One is pretty good and less expensive. Of course, Hill Science Diet is a big one that's love. And then Iams tends to be pretty good too.
Oh, good. Okay. And then, should I remove all of my pets' plastic toys?
So that can be hard because sometimes that's their favorite,
Right.
Can't just take away their most loved toy. But what a good idea is to remove any that have been damaged or that are going to degrade. Keep them out of the sun and out of the water if possible, because that can sometimes speed degradation of plastics. Definitely get rid of any that are small enough they can choke or chew. But if they have a favorite that's a plastic, use your discretion and supervise while they're using it, and maybe don't let them, sleep with it in their mouth or something like that. And, try to incorporate some other natural products in there too. And hopefully they'll pick one of those that they like as well.
Yeah. And especially with the fabric and the stuffing that's in a lot of these fluffier toys is actually made up of plastic. It may be soft, like I said, like the bedding, but it is made up of plastic the same way a lot of our clothes, unfortunately, are also made up of plastic.
Yeah.
So as a vet, have you seen people's pets sick from plastic in your hospital/clinic?
Definitely the intestinal obstructions of plastic. It's hard to say that I have seen them sick from the chemicals simply because, they may come in with cancer, which may be a result of chemical exposure, but I can't say for sure that that's what it. But definitely have seen pets that, got too much of their plastic toy and had to have surgery to remove it. So,
well, Dr. Cheryl, thank you so much for joining us on an Earth Day Live today. We really appreciate it. Is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
I just hope that this spreads the word to as many people as possible in order to, hopefully make a change within the near future rather than later on.
Awesome. And then go to earthday.org and check out our Pets versus Plastic report to get a little bit more information. Dr. Cheryl's also quoted in there throughout because we trust her and all of our vets with all of our pets' lives and health. So thank you again. We really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
Have a good one.
You too.